Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
All right, Peter, how you doing?
George, nice to see you, buddy.
Nice to see you too. I appreciate you. You know, you just mentioned before we started filming what a beautiful day out it is.
It's great out.
So I appreciate.
Do I want to be here? Yes, I want to be here. I want to be here with you on the nicest day of the summer.
Yeah.
I could be doing something else. I want to be here with you.
We always talk about how important sacrifice is to success. This is one of the components.
This is a big sacrifice for both of us.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Want to get right into it?
Let's get into it, man.
So
what we got?
I have a video this is actually our video that hasn't gone out yet.
Our video?
But it's going to go out.
You want me to react to our video?
I want you to react to our video that is going to go out in I think like next week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
So here we go.
Well, I know this video. I sent it to you.
You did.
The guy on the bike being aerodynamic and cruising past everybody. I love this, right? Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Investing is the word that you're so cute. You put investing on him. He's the investor.
Yes, indeed.
And the other guys are the
people who have
what
not
are they?
invested.
The trade time for money people?
Yeah, you trade time for money, work 9 to 5, not 5 to 9.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
So,
here
look,
you go.
I love this. Not only is that a really gorgeous bike he's riding, but it's funny to see a grown-ass man behave like that on a bicycle, so that's funny.
Yeah.
Because it just looks humorous to me. But, there's the cyclist getting in on it now. Everyone, it's a party. Better late than never. Yeah. Look at you, George. You didn't do this to get my reaction. You did this to show off.
Yeah, yes, indeed.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Working I see what you did. Working 9 to 5, working 9 to 5.
Yeah.
There he is, passing everybody who's working 9 to 5.
Yeah.
You have to invest. I mean, come on.
Cool. So then our next reaction I got is a tweet. Do you want to read this for me?
I'll read this tweet. Expectations matter. If you're running a marathon and expect it to feel easy at mile 20, you're in for a rude awakening. If you expect it to feel awful, you'll be prepared to grind. Perhaps on a good day, you'll even be pleasantly surprised. This is true for all hard things. This is by Brad Stolberg. Yeah. So listen, if everything were easy, everybody would do it. Nothing would be worth it. There'd be no risk-reward ratio to manage. You wouldn't get any benefit from things. The hard things are hard for a reason. No one wants to do them. The hard things are hard because they hurt. They suck. They're a pain in the ass. They smell bad. They look bad. They hurt you. They're inconvenient. All these things. But that's where all the good stuff lies, is on the other side of all these things, man. Everything that's worth anything is hard. Yeah. Everything. I mean, look at your life. Look at relationships. Look at finding the right place to live. Look at your kids, your family. I mean, right? I mean, this is like tough love environment for a lot of people. Everything worth having is very hard. And on the other side of the difficulties is all the great stuff that you work so hard for, that you hear is going to be waiting for you once you put in the time and put in the hours and put in the investment. So I agree with this. This isn't like groundbreaking stuff here, but look, you want me to tell you it's going to be different? I'm not going to say it. Anything worth having is difficult. So you can't expect mile 1 or mile 20 of a marathon to be hard. A marathon is called a marathon for a reason, because it goes on and on and on, and it hurts, and it sucks. Like, you know, they call sprints a sprint because you're done and over with in 4 seconds and you go back to having a beer. But like in a marathon, which anything good in life really is, building a career, building a relationship, a marriage, a spouse, a friendship, it's all the long-term stuff that's really good. So, you know, if you want me to tell you it's going to be easy, I'm not going to do it. Nothing in life worth having is easy. Everything in life that you want is hard. That's by design. That's the way it should be. Yeah. You got to get beaten up. You know what my favorite analogy is?
Beaten up behind the dumpster.
You got to get beaten up behind a dumpster on a rainy Tuesday night in a dark alley by a huge dude with a baseball bat. Like, once you've done that a bunch of times and you've come out of that okay, you're good to go. You can conquer anything. But like, until then, you got to work. You got to put in the time. You got to drag your knuckles on the pavement, get them all bloodied up. That's where you find the wins.
All right, well, I'm going to go find a dark alley. And do you want to do a table over here?
Let's go to the table,
All right, let's
George.
do it.
Thanks.
All right, well, it's been a while, Peter.
George.
I appreciate you coming back. And
I missed you.
I missed you too, yeah.
You know, we always say that after there's a break and then we get back together.
Yeah, well, as you said, we end up spending more time together than almost any of our other friends and family, which is maybe unfortunate. But
so you should become perhaps George Siegel.
Yeah, I'll adopt the name. There they go. So I wanted to start talking about American companies reshoring. Construction of new manufacturing facilities increased over 116% over the past year. Signaling, I mean, people have different viewpoints about what this signals, but I guess what I want to know is, how do you think this reshoring of American manufacturing will affect the future of U.S. business and real estate for you yourself?
Well, anytime you become less reliant on something that dictates your success currently, I think that's a good thing. So these American companies are saying we don't want to be as reliant on China, for example, to get us our goods and supplies that we need to then market and package and resell to our global marketplace. Yeah. Sure, there's a rush to buy land and build manufacturing facility. You know, this is a long time coming, by the way. This is not, it took the pandemic for everyone to get kicked in the ass enough to be like, oh, this is no good. I don't want this again. But this has been a long time coming. No one really took action. But now these companies are building manufacturing plants, and it's like a whole new revival of an industry, right? Building manufacturing plants is, you know, was sort of a sleeper in our country for the past, 40 years. But like, you know, now it's like, yeah, let's build manufacturing capabilities. You have to get the zoning. You have to be in a friendly environment in a state or a municipality or county that's going to invite that and permit it. And that's a whole other can of beans of a discussion these days. But assuming you have those things already dealt with and you've got a clear runway and you can just build a structure and manufacture, I think it's a great investment to make. I mean, you're contributing to the economy in ways that you never were before when you own property, employ people, buy equipment, and put it in your property, and you're like manufacturing here on U.S. soil. It's a great thing.
You know, a lot of people mention the shipping cost as well.
There's shipping. Look, the cost of shipping is now competing with the cost of domestic labor. It's not such an easy decision anymore to be like, yeah, I'll just make it overseas and ship it back, which is what we've been doing forever. And so now things are potentially evening out. I'd like to see more of it. Look, it's going to mean more real estate investment opportunity for those who are in that space. It's going to mean a quicker time to market for products being made domestically. No shipping time, no manufacturer risk, no international risk, no port risk, regulatory risk, customs risk. All of those things factor in when you're making your product overseas and then delivering it somewhere else around the world. Look, I think it's a great thing for the United States. I think all these countries, we've been seeing it. I mean, we've been seeing it in the UK for the past several years. It started with Brexit. Mm-hmm. People want to be less reliant on other people. Countries want to be less reliant on other countries. We're seeing it in the EU. We're seeing it in the United States. Look, China and Russia are sort of fighting their way through the forest at the moment. Yeah. India's fighting their way through the forest at the moment. But there's going to be some changes coming up.
I think India's the one that I feel like not many people are talking about unless they're in the know.
It's a big one.
Yeah, I think that's the one that is the sleeper that a lot of people are going to wake up to at some point. It's going to be the giant.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Keep your eye on India.
Yeah. You mentioned like the zoning and things being contingent on that. I did notice that like Intel is building in Phoenix, Novelli in Alabama, Arkansas, Kentucky. So the reason I bring those states up is...
Caterpillar moved.
So,
I know where this is going.
Yeah, exactly. Caterpillar's moved down to, what was it, Texas? Citadel, also Texas. Citadel was Miami. And so what I was asking is, the Wall Street Journal recently noted that Republican-led states have had faster economic recovery compared to Democratic blue states.
Right.
They attribute this largely to mass migration from the states. They say it's not a political thing, that it's more about just affordable housing, lower taxes, that kind of thing. Do you see this as a legitimate observation? Do you think it's political posturing? If it's true, what do you think it means for the blue states?
First of all, the Wall Street Journal is notably a conservative publication.
That's true.
So for them to say this, perhaps somebody would feel it's biased. I feel it's completely reasonable. If you look, this is what we've seen. Factually, actually, this is what's been happening. Yeah. People are migrating out of blue into red, and they did that for a bunch of different reasons. They did it because they wanted more freedoms during a pandemic, a highly regulated period of our history, rules, mandates, all sorts of restrictions. People were tired of it, and they wanted something else. Mm-hmm. And, oh, by the way, it's warmer in Florida. Yep. And, oh, by the way, there's lots of jobs in Texas. And, so there was all sorts of things that have been in the mix recently, but it's actually happening. So I think it's a completely reasonable observation, and I don't think it's politically motivated to say it. Yeah. I just want to point out that the Journal is a conservative publication,
totally. But that's true.
But even if you remove that aspect, and if I read about this in, I don't know, the New York Times or saw it on CNBC, I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's true, because that's what we've seen. These companies they have to have a fighting chance. You can't. Let me tell you, I do business in blue states and I do business in red states. I'm like choked out. I got no more oxygen left in New York and New Jersey. And I got blue ocean in these other places. So it's like, I can tell you just from this one person's experience, an actual living, breathing experience right now with it, it's way easier in states that are traditionally red states, to use the cliche, but it's tough in the blue territories for sure.
Well, and you had sent me that podcast from Ezra Klein that I think in the future we're going to touch on and discuss.
That was an interesting one, right?
Yeah, and so Ezra Klein is, no one would call him a conservative in the media.
Well, that's what I noticed about it. You've got a notably liberal, progressive journalist making statements that are really more supportive of the more conservative agenda as it relates to housing and housing policy. George, I'm seeing this everywhere. Housing policy, people didn't really know where they stood on housing policy. It was like, talk about sleepers. Housing policy was a sleeper forever, right? It was never really like a thing. It was never really a contentious battleground topic. Sure, we need more affordable housing, and there's cities and states in our country where that's been more of a hot topic than in others. But what I'm saying, it hasn't been like nationally,
right.
globally, really, a hot topic the way it is now. Housing policy is now getting pushed to the forefront. And people are saying, oh, maybe we should let them build. Oh, maybe we shouldn't be NIMBYs. Right. Oh, maybe we shouldn't have restrictive housing policies. These towns and these towns alone control housing production with their policies. I can't build unless the town lets me, if I get approved. Like, if they deny me, don't want to approve me, they don't like me, I'm an outsider, I'm an insider, but I piss people off, they don't like the location, I don't have enough affordable units set aside, they want more, but I need more density, they don't want to give me more density. George, it's a disaster, dude. No one knows how to talk about these points. No one on city councils and local governments knows how to negotiate with developers and make action happen for their town. I mean, these towns need ratables, so you need to let them build for the rateable argument, but you also need to let them build because we have a housing shortage. Build more supply, but no one knows how to do it. And now, today, housing policy is at the forefront of every dinner conversation and at every bar and at every bus and everywhere. People are talking about housing and how to get more housing so that we don't have these shortages and these price problems that we have now. Guys, the only way to do it is to build more. You got to lean on your local leaders. Open up the restrictive policies. They have to promote construction and new development. I mean, there's ways to do it responsibly. You can have technical review on the architectural design, on the look, on the feel, on the angle. Like, put the builders to task on all that stuff. But you got to let them build. You have to find a way to let these new housing projects and developments get out of the ground. I don't know why these places have such a tough time. I mean, there's like New York, it's impossible, right? They took away, in the city, in Manhattan, they took away the 421A. That's got to come back in order to create more construction in the city. But if you look outside of the city, look at like Westchester. Like, it's it's beautiful up there. I'd love to live in Westchester, but it's impossible. You can't build or do anything in Westchester. Look, in New Jersey's the most screwed up state in the union. I mean, there's 535 municipalities. No one talks to one another. They're all disconnected. There's no sharing of resources. There's not like one business-minded, experienced leader in the whole state. It's nuts.
Well,
and sorry, I want to go to just California's been struggling with it.
Right.
They've upzoned. They're looking at a lot of they're the most restrictive state we have. And they're looking at like, oh, maybe we should be less restrictive. And then you have places like in Colorado, like Aspen, Colorado they don't let you build anything. I mean, Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, they don't let you build anything. A lot of it's land preservation. That's what's used to restrict development. But like you've got pockets that are restricted, but you got a lot of places that are trying to deal with it and open up.
Yeah. No, and you mentioned the Aspen thing. That was something I was going to
bring up. What did I mention?
Aspen. That Aspen, they capped rental permits to 75% of the existing number. And I thought this was a typo. It said they're looking to limit demolition permits to 6 a year.
6 a year. So if you want to knock down your old tear down, you got to get in line.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. So these policies will limit supply. Prices will go through the roof. You think it's expensive to buy something in Aspen, Colorado? It is. I mean, it's I think the single most expensive zip code there is. I think it's like Aspen, Montecito, Nantucket, Palm Beach, the Hamptons. I think those places, those like Tony places that like normal people can't really buy in. Aspen's up there. But you think it's expensive now? Wait until these demolition restrictions occur and these rental restrictions. Oh my God, George, Aspen is going to be, you're not going to be able to touch it.
Well, and I think that's what's interesting is that when we talk about the red state, blue state thing, it's easy to say like, oh, well, people are moving to the red states because they like certain things about the red states better.
But they are moving.
No, I know they are moving. Yeah. But I think part of that is also that there's such a high, you talked about supply and demand, such a high demand for certain things that are in those blue states that are no longer accessible. So land, housing, jobs, like all these reasons that people went there in the first place that made them so great that people are drawn to.
Look, California's great. It's like the most beautiful place, right? The whole state, the whole darn thing. It's amazing. It's a huge economy. It's so messed up. And, living in Manhattan, it's great if you're young, if you're single,
super poor or super rich.
If you're super poor or super rich, if you're the masses in between. Living in Manhattan, pain in the ass, man. Like it's good if you're single, you can meet people, you can date, like it's super easy, right? All these people in one place, everyone's looking to party. Like
that's where I met my wife.
There you go. Yeah. But like it's tough. Yeah. And like if you're not in that what's now I think a small group of people that want to live in a 500 square foot apartment and like in a 5th floor or 6th floor walk up and pay $5,000 a month for it. And, you're like pulling your eyeballs out of your brain to do that. I mean, it's the cost benefit analysis, the pro and cons. It's not like it used to be. I mean, it's tough. It's tough living in these cities and in these expensive places. And, so people want something different. They want freedoms. They don't want to be told what to do. We've seen that, but they also want like a chance. They want to pay lower taxes. They want to have more housing options. You don't have a lot of housing options in New York City. You don't have a lot of housing options in San Francisco and California. I mean, you got to pay if you can afford it. You have options, but if you're like a normal person and you make anywhere from $40,000 to $200,000, even $200,000 a year, you're not doing well. If you make $200,000 a year and you live in New York City or San Francisco, you're just not. As scary as that is, because that's a high income. But people want a better chance. The lower taxes, they want more job opportunities. These companies are going to these red states. They can't take the restrictions. They can't take the taxes. And some of these governors and mayors are saying, fine, sayonara, see you later, right? They're like puffing their chest out and they're like challenging a little bit. And then some of these states are like, come here, come to me, we want you. And, it was a travesty what happened in New York City with Amazon pulling out. One of the worst things ever. That part of New York, it needed those jobs. It needed that infusion of capital. It needed the economy. I mean, it needed all of it. Mm-hmm. And New York pushed it out. It was really a shame. I see it in a lot of the blue states. Look, by definition, we're getting into red versus blue and what the reasons are that they are red and blue in the first place. It's getting easier for people to see. The red states are making it easier. They're just making it easier. There's less regulation, less restriction. It's a little freer. The taxes are a little less or a lot less, whatever the deal is. But like, it's not such a difficult proposition anymore. It used to be, I don't know, I'll stick it out in New York. I don't know, I'll stick it out in LA or San Francisco, even though I can't afford anything and my living situation sucks. It's great being here, right? Yeah. You don't hear that so much anymore.
Yeah. Unless you're super rich or super poor.
Super rich or super poor. But I want to talk about the super poor thing because I don't want, like, obviously if you're super rich, you can afford anything and like nothing's a problem. But if you're super poor, like, I think New York's a great place because there's the subway, you can get anywhere. There's free stuff to do all over the city. There's a high energy, a high vibe. Like, you don't need to pay money to attend fancy things in New York City. Like, you can just sort of exist in New York City and be entertained and have access to culture and beauty and entertainment and all these things. So that's what I mean when I say super poor. I don't mean to say anything else.
Trivialize that.
Yeah,
no, of course.
But I find that to be the case. And like I said, if you're single and you want to go meet someone and date, like, these densely populated places are obviously it's like that's where you want to go. I think people are finding they want space, they want freedom. They're like working from home 2 days a week. They want it to be a good, they don't, 500 square feet in an apartment is not a good situation for work from home. So they need the space. All not new, but we're seeing it factually. Actually, we're seeing it. So it doesn't seem politicized to talk about it. It's actually happening. I think the blue states need to evaluate themselves and say, well, do I care? Yes or no? And if I care, what am I going to do to stop it? I mean, I hear California being like, yeah, let them leave. We don't care.
But then they've also done the upzoning, and that kind of taking some measures in that direction. So
look, the upzoning was an important thing to do. It may have been more ceremonial than actually moving the needle.
Yeah.
I think the upzoning is going to create like 800, 900, 700,000, maybe a million ADUs. That will gently address the problem. They need to do more, but that's part of the overall housing policy, and I think it's a good thing.
But I would imagine that's partially in response to some of the exodus to Texas and whatnot.
You think that when people leave to go to Texas, that housing would free up, but no, they need to build more. Yeah. They need to build more than just the amount of housing that's now free because people are leaving California.
Yeah, totally. Over the last 6 months, we've talked about rent, and it's usually talking about how
we've talked about rent since
since the beginning of course. Time. No, but usually that we're talking about how red hot rents have been, and things are starting to cool off now. I was wondering, what do you see in the future for that? How do you prepare for that personally?
Okay.
And what do you recommend?
Well, let's define what you mean when you say things are cooling off, because I don't see things cooling off.
Yeah.
What I see is still a very significant supply and demand imbalance. So there's more demand than there is supply, housing shortage. So rents are continuing to go up. What I see cooling off is the rate at which the increases happen at renewal. For the past couple of years, in many markets around the country and around the world, renewals were happening in double digits, 20%, 30%, 40, 50%. In some cases, rents are going up 50%. George, I just read an article 2 days ago that Jersey City had the single biggest average rent increase in our whole country.
I saw that too, yeah.
So, right there, you've got all sorts of new entrants into the list for where rents are going up the most. But I think that New York rents have rubber banded back so much that Jersey City participates in a symbiotic way. I still see rental demand being very strong, and I see rents increasing. But instead of 30 or 40 or 20%, maybe we're getting back down to normal ground basic levels like, I don't know, 10%, 8%, 6%. George, there was a time not long ago where property owners could get 5, 4, 6% a year at renewal. We're ringing the bell.
Right.
So double-digit rent increases is like, holy moly. And by the way, we need it. Property owners need it because all of their expenses have gone up double digits. So it's moving in parity with inflation, and that's how free markets should work. I don't see things cooling off. I see the supply-demand imbalance still being very significant, and that's going to continue to put upward price pressure on rents. But you may see a cooling off of the major double-digit year-over-year increases. That was crazy. I mean, you can't sustain 20, 30, 40, 50% annual year-over-year rent increases. Markets just can't do that because incomes don't rise that much. Rents track with incomes. Incomes have gone up over the past couple of years, so rent should be tracking with that. George, in our markets, if we're seeing anywhere from 8 to 15% right now, I think it's healthy. In some cases, if I've got underpriced inventory, I'm going to want to get that up to what market rate is. Right. I don't have that much underpriced or mispriced inventory. A lot of other people might. But in our buildings, I got to keep up with inflation. I have to meet my debt service coverage ratios for my lender. I have to be able to pay property taxes in my towns. And by the way, property taxes are the single biggest expense a property owner has. So when property taxes go up, rents have to rise in a ratio that's similar, because otherwise you're not going to be able to sustain the business of operating that building. Every building is a business, right? Think of a strip mall where you've got all these different commercial tenants lined up, and you look at buildings, every building has its own economic profile. They're businesses. They need to make money, they need to pay bills, and they need to pay their property taxes. These towns got to get a hold of budgets and deal with inflationary measures themselves, because taxes are going up everywhere, and the property owners have to pay for that via rent increases. So, all of it's connected, all of it's tied together. You've heard me say it a million times.
Yeah, no, totally. Do you like The Atlantic?
The publication?
Yeah. I feel like such a basic millennial when I talk about The Atlantic. 'Cause I'm like, I read this Atlantic article. And like,
so I don't like it or dislike it. And not just The Atlantic, but I don't like or dislike publications. I read many publications from different parts of the world and on both sides of the aisle, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because my objective when I consume media and information is to hear all sides of the story, and then I want to make up my own mind.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So I don't like or dislike The Atlantic or the Journal or the Times or the London Financial Times or anything.
Yeah.
It's just another news source.
Yeah, I love that.
I take it with a grain of salt.
Well, this article from The Atlantic was by Jerusalem Demsas, and he was talking about super talls.
Who is it by?
Jerusalem Demsas.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but but that's the.
Well, you sounded so in the know when you rattled off his name.
Well, I try and act accordingly.
Yeah.
But talking about super talls, you've heard this phrase
super
before?
talls.
Yeah, like
over in the Middle East, they just announced a. Is this where you're? It's going to be like 50 miles long and 300 meters tall, and it's going to hold 5 million people and all of this stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
It's funny, when I came up with this topic and when this article came out, I wasn't going to talk about that. But then I was like, well, now we have to talk about the line. Yeah,
the line. That's what it's called, the line in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so wild.
Amazing, right? Yeah. I think it's ambitious, and I think it's great, because if you have a housing shortage, here's somebody that's saying, look, we'll build housing. Right. They can afford it over there. They can play around and experiment. That's clearly what this is. Mm-hmm. But from an engineering perspective, if they pull this off, I mean, they say it would take 20 or 30 or 50 years or something to build some long amount of time. But if they do it in stages and they populate it in stages and the systems work, and why not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy thing.
Yeah, you're bringing up an interesting point that I haven't heard before, which is because this author was saying how obviously this isn't an answer for affordable housing by itself, but that it can contribute to alleviating some of that pressure.
Nothing by itself is an answer to affordable housing.
But you're bringing something up interesting, that in the same way that NASA, space, the space program leads to other things for civilians, or like this pen, that these kinds of ambitious giant projects might not be the solution to the problem, but the engineering and the innovation that happens within it,
they're going to create jobs.
Right, exactly.
I mean, they're going to be whole economies. Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
The super talls, look, I don't know that going up 300 meters in the sky is something that I would want to do. And as a matter of fact, where my place is in New York, it's right along Billionaires Row. Mm-hmm. I'm not in one of those buildings yet. But you can see all the super tall buildings that are now taken over the Midtown skyline in Manhattan. Yeah. And they're really big. Yeah. And they're in the tops of them are in the clouds. And you look at these things and you go, my God, what does it feel like living up that high? Do you feel the swaying? And these are the subjects of all the media over the past couple of years, where they were built not so great, and there's leaking and there's creaking, and they do sway in the wind, and the elevators don't work. So I don't know if it's super tall, or if the answer is moderately tall but just wide enough and just long as hell, and then just stick 5 million people in that thing and they never have to leave it. It sounds really futuristic. And look, whatever it takes. If you have to upzone. You have to build more. You want to build a super tall, build a super tall. You have to provide more housing supply to fix our housing supply shortage.
Right, well, and that comes back to the zoning question, which is there's a lot of cities where super talls aren't even allowed. And so, you got to allow for the innovation, allow for the new thing.
Yeah, New York's an amazing place. If you're ever in Midtown on Central Park South and just stop and look up, you'll see 5 or 6 buildings that are just massively towering over everything else, and it's incredible to imagine living. I was in one of them, one of the units in one of the buildings, and it's they're beautiful, of course, and the views are amazing, but you feel like you're a little exposed and you feel like
scary.
you're a little vulnerable. And, I remember the summer after 9/11, there was a massive grid breakdown in New York City and there was no power for a long time. I mean, can you imagine being stuck up in, in that fishbowl of an apartment in a tall building with like no HVAC and no elevator and you're fucked? Or in a subway, or like you work at the top of the Empire State Building and you have to walk downstairs and somehow get home.
Yeah, it's its own problems.
Totally. Yeah. It's only so good.
Yeah, I think I was living right next to where the new Gary, it's not new anymore, but the Gary building that was
on the West Side Highway?
No, downtown, right next to the City Hall, where the like swirly one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that actually is a super tall. I don't know if that hit 300 meters, but it's taller than most of the other buildings around there. And I remember thinking like, man, the penthouse in that building would be beautiful, but I would not want to be there.
Yeah, you need a helipad and a helicopter to get you up and down. Cause
so crazy. Yeah,
you're reliant upon, and this is what we were talking about. Countries don't want to be reliant upon other countries. People don't want to be reliant upon their states or governments or other people for their success, for their well-being and happiness. So I think if you live in a super tall, I don't know, you're sort of reliant on a lot of things to live your life. No, totally. I'll take a townhouse on the ground.
We're seeing an increasing amount of layoffs every week. I feel like every day.
That's what happens when rates rise.
Totally. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, not really about that, although we can talk about that if you want. I wanted to talk about how do you make yourself layoff proof
as an employee?
As an employee, yeah.
Run through walls, take bullets, be incredibly loyal, show up early, stay late, ask a lot of questions, learn, make mistakes, don't make the same mistakes twice, and add a lot of value to your employer. It's very simple to me.
Yeah.
If I've missed anything, let me know. Do you think I've missed anything? Here's what I think you need to have to be layoff proof.
Yeah, enthusiasm is something that this morning I was listening to a podcast. They were talking about that, and that feels like underrated as far as employees go. That having enthusiasm for the job, the project, the people you work with.
Well, it helps, and it's great if you're enthusiastic, and it's great if your employer's enthusiastic, and if everyone's enthusiastic, isn't that great? It's like a party. We can all kumbaya and hug each other. It's fantastic. Yeah. But look, enthusiasm can be bred, it can be taught, it can be acquired, it can be learned. Like you don't have to have yourself jumping out of a cake box, and dancing around the first day. But like, it would be nice if you're enthusiastic about your job. I would hope you are. You can also succeed and be layoff proof if you're not so enthusiastic, but really, really effective. Show up early, stay late. But the thing about enthusiasm is you don't want to be grumpy or a Debbie Downer. People need to be around like uplifting, happy, light. You want to be around others that are just easy to be around. So if you're not enthusiastic, maybe that makes you not easy to be around. I'd check that at the door. There's a bunch of things in this recipe. If you want to be layoff proof, just add a lot of value and just run through walls and take bullets, all these things. Like you have to. That's how you're going to stand out. If you're just like everybody else, if you show up at 9, if you leave at 5, if you do the bare minimum, if you don't pick up the phone that rings at 4:59 because you're walking out the door in a minute, you got a problem. Me, I pick up the phone at 4:59. And when I'm done with that call at 5:03, if the phone rings again, I pick it up again. I mean, I can't live with myself. I can't sleep at night going home knowing that I didn't do my best. I didn't try my best. So what? Like, well, they didn't pay me for the extra 5 minutes, so why should I be there? Like, people that think like that, I don't know, you're the problem. Yeah. Honestly, if you think like that, you have a problem and you are the problem and you're a pill and you got to fix yourself. Your mind isn't right. You got to get your shit together.
I have a friend who is a manager at a restaurant in LA, and she said she and I both worked in restaurants in New Jersey, and it's pretty cutthroat in the New Jersey restaurants, and you basically fuel yourself on tequila for the whole weekend. And in this particular situation, she had an employee who was wiping glasses down, and it hit 3:00, and they started to leave, and they left.
They just left it all sitting there.
12. There were only like 12 glasses.
Yeah, it's not my job.
And not my job. She goes, hey, can you just finish those? And they look at the clock and they go, sorry, I can't.
Oh. It's horrible.
I was like, holy shit.
It's horrible.
And she said that was very common.
Well, that mindset is honestly, it's a cancer in our society. Yeah. I hate to say it like that. I mean, I know people like this, and I love them dearly, but I can't be around them for any more than a short period of time because it's. To me, that's the biggest unenthusiastic Debbie Downer thing you could be is just, just everything we're talking about. That kind of person, not for me. I have nothing in common with that kind of mindset or someone who thinks like that.
Yeah, no, it really blew my mind.
It's tough.
Last, I want to talk about mass timber.
Mass timber? What brings this topic up today?
I think I'm a neophyte when it comes to real estate, when it comes to construction, all these things. And so I saw this article about mass timber. I had never heard of it. And that it's on the rise. Barron's was talking about that, there's this rise.
We're talking about manufactured lumber products,
so
right?
like cross-laminated timber.
Cross-lams, micro-lams.
Exactly, all those things.
And we've been using it for years. I don't know why it's on the rise now.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to know. Like, do you have any thoughts on that, about how you used it? Do you think that's something that will be used in the future? I think it's an environmental thing.
I use it. It will be used in the future. Yeah. People say that it's sustainable, that it's environmentally friendly building product. I don't know about that stuff because people make claims to all sorts of products being environmentally friendly and sustainable, and I just don't know. I think it's something that a lot of companies and people just say without like really backing it up or quantifying what that means. But
I think they call it greenwashing.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. Yeah.
So for me, we use it because it's a durable, reliable, affordable product, and it's very effective. You can coat it. They're smooth surfaces, perfectly flat, smooth, non-porous surfaces that you can coat with fire retardant or paints or different treatments to achieve a certain result. So that's always good. When we have larger room spans and we have to go out further with beams, you can't always put steel in there, and steel's very expensive. You have long wait times for steel if you're getting it internationally from China or other places. But, micro-lams and mass timber solutions are really great. We renovate a lot of apartments. We remove kitchen walls and create larger open living areas. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we have to micro-lam in the ceilings to create the room spans to get the support that we need to pass code. So we've been using mass timber for a while. It's only most appropriate for lower rise buildings. You can't go up more than a few stories. I mean, you can't build a high rise out of this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But for low rise and 2 or 3, maybe even 4-story buildings, I think that's the tallest you can go is about 4, maybe 5. I know someone can correct me. Anything more than that, you have to combine it with steel or just start using steel. But there's a lot of opportunity for it. And, we saw what happened with the price of lumber over the pandemic. And, these manufactured lumber products are really good. You can get them typically, and it's good stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot more of those factories. We're talking about factories being built. Yep, they're going to manufacture this stuff. Yeah. We're not going to have to import it from Scandinavia and from Canada. So, look, anything that helps the building and construction industry, I think, is got a bright, bright future. We're talking about 3D printing. We're talking about prefab homes. We're talking about precast concrete foundation panels. We're talking about mass timber products. We're talking about plumbing and electric technologies that let you do home runs of circuits or run plumbing lines faster with greater efficiency and with a higher quality end result, like no leaks, no shorts or anything like that if it's an electrical circuit. So we're seeing that a lot of new technologies are coming into the marketplace, and they're being deployed during construction. This is going to be good for our country and for our construction industry. We just have to build more stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No.
Cool. Well, that's what I got today. Anything you want to touch on before we go to Q&A?
No, my past couple of weeks have been filled with helping a bunch of people make investment decisions. I still get a lot of people asking me how to invest, what's the right way to invest. Here's the document. Can you look at it for me? Should I do the deal? Should I not do the deal? And, it's great that everybody wants to be an investor, or everybody is investing in some way, shape, or form now, it seems. And I think that's really good. I mean, it's not really good. It's essential, and it's awesome. So the fact that more people are in the investing discussion and actually doing it, good stuff. But you got to know how to invest. You don't just walk onto a baseball field and whack a grand slam your first time out and then do it over and over and over again. There's basics. There's fundamentals. There's principles. You have to practice. You have to repeat to gain the skill, confidence, the mindset. You have to know how to execute when investing. Right. So a lot of people that are reaching out to me are like, hey, can you look at this deal? Like, I don't know if it's any good. And I'm glad. I'm happy to give a comment when I'm asked for one. Yeah. But I'd like to see people get more educated on how to look at a deal. Is it what makes a deal a good deal or not? What makes a good investment worth putting money in or not. You could risk analysis the crap out of any investment in the world and just end up not doing anything. So there is some element of risk. Yeah. You have to be able to be comfortable and move forward at some point if you want to be an investor. But you have to do due diligence. You have to know what to look for. You have to read documents. I mean, it's work, and people have to put in the work. So I want to see more of that.
Any particular resources, other than obviously watching us, that you feel like are good for
I'd find the 5 best stock pickers and the 5 best real estate developers and the 5 best crypto people, and just follow them, engage with them, and listen and absorb as much as you can. Ask questions when it's appropriate, and start studying the art of investing, because investing is an art. It's a science. It's a whole lot of things. They don't teach it in our school systems. You get a little bit of exposure if you're a business major in colleges and universities later on, but that even depends, because those programs are dying, right? And it depends on who's teaching them, and it depends on what the agenda is of their teaching. If they're teaching, Dave Ramsey, or if they're teaching, right? So it's who you're listening to. Yeah. But you got to understand. Look, everything about investing boils down to knowing how to value an asset. If you can value an asset, you're 90% of the way there of being an investor. After that, you just have to decide how much you want to pay for it. But if you can value the asset and do it confidently and accurately, like you've looked at the documents, the earnings reports, the SEC filings, you've been to the factory, you've seen the labor, you've seen the materials where there's like you have the whole thing, like you're an expert, right? You can value an asset and come up with a value, and then decide if you want to pay that value or not. That's all investing is. So people need to know how to be good at valuing assets. How do you, I know how much a $100 bill is worth. It's worth $100. I know how much a $20 bill is worth. It's worth $20. And you know how much I'm willing to pay for a $100 bill, George?
$100.
$100 at the most.
Yeah.
I'd certainly be willing to pay $90 for a $100 bill.
That's a good
so
deal.
It's the same thing when picking an investment or a real estate deal or a stock or anything. You have to know how much it's worth, and you have to know how much you're willing to pay for it at maximum.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Totally. All right. Well, thanks so much, Peter, and I'll see you over at Q&A.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everybody.
All right, Peter, you ready for another Q&A?
George, let's do it, man.
All right, this one is from Kristen Stern.
Kristen Stern. I feel like I went to school with her.
I hope you did. She said,
Kristen?
Is there a tool or technology that you wish existed in real estate when you were just starting out? What tool or technology do you foresee changing the landscape of your business in the future?
When I was first starting out, we had the Hewlett-Packard financial calculator that did all sorts of great time value of money calculations and mortgage principal and interest payment calculations. And it was really big. It was like, the size of 2 of your hands put together. And it was like a small book. And you couldn't bring it into classes for tests because you could store data in there. You could actually take notes. It was the earliest version of being able to take notes in the Hewlett-Packard. That evolved into Microsoft Excel. Thank you, Excel, because everything I do in business is a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. I love being able to calculate a bunch of different things really quickly at once. So for me, I had Excel. Today, there's all sorts of new platforms and tricks and things that people are using, but I'm a fundamentalist, and I index towards and focus on basic business and investing fundamentals and principles. So I'm really satisfied with my HP calculator and my Microsoft Excel. But I want to hear from you guys. What would you like to see, or what are you using that I need to use? Someone slap me across the face with whatever tool you're using. I want to know what's out there that can make my life as a real estate entrepreneur and as an investor easier. So help me out.
I love that. It was very philosophical that you answer the question with a question. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Peter, and I'll see you next time.
That's indicative that I really don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I think smart people tend to ask more questions than they do make statements. So I think that's the good thing. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.